America's most dangerous animal isn't necessarily the one with the biggest teeth, the strongest bite, or the most terrifying reputation. It may not even be a predator. In fact, one of the deadliest animals on Earth is small enough to land on your skin without you noticing. But before we get to that animal, there's something you need to understand about danger in America. It can come from almost anywhere. It can be waiting beside a hiking trail, hiding beneath fallen leaves, standing motionless in a river, swimming just beyond the shoreline, or wandering through your own backyard. And sometimes, the animal that looks completely harmless is the one you should never underestimate. Start with one of North America's most recognizable predators, the American black bear. Black bears are widespread across North America, and some large individuals can weigh hundreds of pounds while reaching impressive speeds over short distances. But the biggest mistake you can make around one isn't simply being afraid of it. It's getting too close. A bear defending food, cubs, or its personal space can become extremely dangerous in seconds. And that brings us to an even larger predator, the grizzly bear. Grizzlies are enormously powerful, but what makes an encounter especially dangerous is that they can move much faster than a human might expect from an animal of their size. In Yellowstone, the National Park Service requires visitors to stay at least 100 yards from bears and wolves for exactly this reason. But even a bear doesn't necessarily have to attack for you to understand how powerful wildlife can be. Sometimes the most dangerous part is simply realizing how quickly the distance between you and the animal can disappear. Then there is the mountain lion, a predator built almost entirely around stealth. It can move quietly through rugged terrain and use its powerful hind legs to make extraordinary leaps. You may never hear one coming, and in most encounters, the animal wants nothing to do with you. But that is precisely what makes its hunting strategy so fascinating. It doesn't need to overpower its target from the front when it can rely on surprise. Wolves take a completely different approach. A single grey wolf is an impressive predator, but a pack can coordinate its movements and pursue prey far larger than any individual wolf. Despite their reputation, attacks by healthy wild wolves on humans are extremely rare, and the real story is not that wolves are constantly hunting people. It's that they demonstrate just how effective cooperation can be in the wild. And then there's the American alligator, a predator that can make perfectly still water feel completely different. Found throughout much of the southeastern United States, alligators spend enormous amounts of time motionless, waiting for the right opportunity. Their powerful jaws are designed for gripping and crushing, but the most important part of an encounter is often what you don't notice. The animal may already be much closer than it appears. Now leave the predators behind and look at the animals that can turn a harmless-looking trail into a serious hazard. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake is one of North America's largest venomous snakes, and its combination of camouflage, venom, and defensive behavior makes accidental encounters especially dangerous. You may be walking through brush without realizing that a snake is lying only a few feet away. The timber rattlesnake creates a similar problem in forests and rocky terrain across parts of the eastern United States. It usually wants to avoid humans, but when a person accidentally gets too close, the situation can change rapidly. Then there's the western diamondback, one of the most widespread rattlesnakes in the American Southwest. Its habitat can overlap with areas used by people, meaning you don't necessarily have to be deep in the wilderness to encounter one. And sometimes, the most dangerous part of a venomous snake isn't aggression at all, it's camouflage. Copperheads are a perfect example. Their patterns can blend remarkably well with fallen leaves and forest debris, creating the possibility of an accidental encounter when someone steps too close. Cottonmouths add another twist. These venomous snakes are associated with wetlands and waterways throughout the southeastern United States, and when threatened, they may open their mouths and expose the strikingly pale interior that gave them their common name. It's a warning display, and the message is simple. You are already too close. Coral snakes are different again. They are generally secretive and reluctant to bite humans, but they possess potent neurotoxic venom, proving once again that appearance and behavior do not always tell the whole story. But snakes aren't the only animals capable of delivering venom. Some of America's most medically significant creatures are small enough to hide inside places you barely think about. The black widow is one of them. Its venom can produce severe pain, muscle cramps, and other symptoms. But most bites happen when the spider is accidentally disturbed, rather than because it is actively hunting people. The brown recluse creates a completely different kind of concern. It prefers quiet, undisturbed areas, and bites may initially seem minor before more serious local tissue damage becomes apparent in some cases. Then there are stinging insects, where the danger can come not from one animal, but from hundreds or thousands acting together. Africanized honeybees can become highly defensive when their colony is threatened, turning a single disturbance into a swarm response. Bald-faced hornets can also defend their nests aggressively, and unlike honeybees, they can sting repeatedly. Even ordinary-looking vegetation can therefore hide a colony that you never knew was there. And then there is the Asian giant hornet, an invasive species that has received significant attention in the Pacific Northwest because of its potential impact on honeybees and other insects. But America's dangerous animals don't stop at the shoreline. Beneath the water, the rules change completely. Bull sharks are particularly interesting because they can tolerate both saltwater and freshwater environments, allowing them to enter habitats where most people would never expect to encounter a shark. But shark attacks remain rare, and the movie image of sharks constantly hunting humans is very different from reality. Great white sharks are another example. They are enormous, powerful predators found in American coastal waters, but humans are not their normal prey, and the actual probability of being attacked by a shark is extremely low. The Portuguese man-o-war presents a completely different kind of marine danger. It may look like a single strange jellyfish, but it is actually a colony of specialized organisms, and its long tentacles can deliver extremely painful stings. Even a creature washed up on the beach can remain something you should not casually touch. Stingrays create another unusual hazard, because most injuries happen when people accidentally step on them in shallow water. The animal isn't chasing anyone. It is simply defending itself after being surprised. And then there's the lionfish, an invasive species whose venomous spines can cause intense pain and swelling, while its expanding populations create ecological problems in invaded waters. But everything we've discussed so far leads to a much stranger question. What if the most dangerous animal in America isn't dangerous because it can tear you apart, bite you, or sting you? What if its real weapon is something microscopic? That brings us to the mosquito. The mosquito doesn't have claws. It doesn't have powerful jaws. It doesn't look remotely like a predator. Yet the CDC describes the mosquito as the world's deadliest animal because mosquitoes can transmit diseases, including dengue, West Nile, Zika, chikungunya, malaria, and others around the world. In the United States, West Nile virus is the leading cause of mosquito-borne disease in the contiguous states, and mosquito-borne diseases can cause severe illness and death. The mosquito changes the entire definition of what a dangerous animal can be. You don't need enormous teeth if you can carry a pathogen. You don't need to chase your victim if the disease can spread through a single bite. And mosquitoes aren't the only tiny animals capable of doing this. The deer tick is another example. It may be tiny enough to go unnoticed, yet it can transmit Lyme disease and other pathogens. The fire ant takes a completely different approach. One ant may not seem like much, but colonies can contain enormous numbers of workers, and their stings can cause intense pain, and in some people, serious allergic reactions. The kissing bug is another example of a creature whose appearance tells you almost nothing about its potential importance. Some species can transmit the parasite that causes Chagas disease, making an ordinary-looking insect part of a much larger public health story. But now let's return to something much easier to see. animals that people routinely underestimate. The American bison may look calm, almost peaceful, while grazing across a field, but in Yellowstone, bison have injured more people than any other animal. The National Park Service warns visitors to stay at least 25 yards away because bison are unpredictable, can run about 3 times faster than humans, and can defend their space when threatened. Between 2000 and 2015, Yellowstone recorded 25 bison-related human injuries, and nearly half happened when people approached bison too closely, often while trying to photograph them. There were no deaths in that period, but many injuries required medical treatment or hospitalization. And that is the lesson bison teach better than almost any predator. Herbivore does not mean harmless. Moose create a similar problem. They can weigh well over 1,000 pounds, and during certain times of the year, especially around calves or breeding season, their behavior can become much more aggressive. Elk can also appear completely peaceful until breeding season changes their behavior. The danger is not that these animals are naturally looking for people to attack. It's that humans sometimes mistake a calm-looking wild animal for a tame one. Coyotes create another modern problem because they have learned to live surprisingly close to people. Instead of remaining confined to remote wilderness, they can survive in suburban and urban environments, making encounters with pets and occasionally people possible. And then there are feral swine, one of America's most destructive invasive mammals. The USDA estimates that approximately 6 million feral swine are spread across more than 31 states, creating problems for agriculture, ecosystems, human health, and public safety. They reproduce rapidly, adapt easily, and can become dangerous when threatened. But perhaps the most surprising animals on this list are the ones that can appear right outside your home. Raccoons are common wildlife hosts for rabies, as are skunks and several other species. In the United States, most reported animal rabies cases occur in wildlife, with raccoons, skunks, bats, and foxes among the important reservoirs. That doesn't mean every raccoon or skunk is dangerous, but it does mean you should never treat unfamiliar wildlife as a pet simply because it looks harmless. And then there is an animal that most Americans encounter far more often than any grizzly, rattlesnake, or shark: the domestic dog. Dogs are not wild predators, and the overwhelming majority of dogs are not dangerous, but their close relationship with humans means that dog-related injuries occur on a completely different scale. CDC data recorded 468 US deaths from being bitten or struck by a dog between 2011 and 2021, an average of about 43 deaths per year, excluding deaths from rabies caused by dog bites. And that brings us back to the real answer. So, what is America's most dangerous animal? If you judge danger by raw physical power, the answer might be a massive predator or one of the continent's largest herbivores. If you judge it by venom, the answer changes again. If you judge it by the potential consequences of a bite or sting, another group takes the lead. And if you judge it by disease transmission on a global scale, the mosquito stands above everything else. The deeper lesson is that danger in nature has no single shape. Sometimes it weighs 2,000 pounds. Sometimes it has fangs. Sometimes it hides beneath fallen leaves. Sometimes it swims beneath your feet. Sometimes it lives in a nest you never noticed. And sometimes it is small enough to disappear before you even realize it was there. The most dangerous animal isn't always the one that looks dangerous. Sometimes the greatest threat is the one you never saw coming.